Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and The Last Jedi, bad movie. We can all agree. I've harped on that now for months. I'm kind of tired of harping on it, to be honest with you. But when articles like this come out, I feel like I don't have much of a choice because it's served up to me on a silver platter of I told you so. What we have here is Heroic Hollywood with an article titled Star Wars, Mark Hamill reflects on tragic conclusion to Luke Skywalker's tale. Now, we know for a fact that Mark Hamill is not happy with how the movie played out. We know for a fact that he was not too thrilled with Rian Johnson's script. He has been open about this. He has been, well, subtly open about this, making the Jake Skywalker comment, which he walked back. He walked back months later after it was called out, and it's really interesting to see this pop up once again. And I'm kind of confused considering the fact that I'm pretty certain he's gonna be in Episode 9. I'm pretty sure they're not gonna sit there and let Episode 9, the conclusion of the Skywalker saga, have no Skywalkers in it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But this is what he says in the interview. Mark Hamill has been quite outspoken about the treatment of Luke Skywalker by the film's director Rian Johnson, and how the character went from where he ended in Return of the Jedi to his outlook of life in The Last Jedi. In a long interview with IGN, Hamill goes into detail on the shift in Luke's character, saying, "There's just a huge gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. I had to really contemplate that. I said, hey, how did I go from being the most optimistic, positive character to this cranky, suicidal man who wants to get people off his island?" Yeah, it's true. Right? How did he go from being basically the chosen one, bringing balance to the Force, restoring balance to the Force, undoing what his father did, ending what his father started, to this guy living on Octu, drinking green tit milk, while the creature that he is suckling from looks like they're about ready to reach orgasm, all while hanging out with these nun-like creatures and really avoiding a tree full of books. It just made no sense. There's 30 years of lore there. There's deep Star Wars lore there that exists in the alternate EU that's no longer canon, and I'm sure will be explored quite a bit in the new canon, provided that they go back and write those books. We do know that in Star Wars Battlefront 2, you do encounter Luke Skywalker post Return of the Jedi, so there is some stuff going on there, but otherwise there's not much, right? So how is it that he went from being this optimistic guy to just hiding off on a rock in the middle of nowhere waiting to die? And it's not all what happened with Kylo Ren. It's not all that. Like, there's got to be stuff that leads him to going to his nephew's cabin or tent in the middle of the night and looking to assassinate him. There's got to be more to that particular story. But let's see what else he says. Now, how does Luke go from being so optimistic and bright to a man who comes to an island to die? In Mark Hamill's eyes, even a Jedi, especially Luke Skywalker, would never give up and go against everything he'd lived for and fought for in his youth. Saying here, it was a radical change, but I think sometimes being pushed out of your comfort zone is a good thing. Although part of me said to Ryan, but you know, a Jedi would never give up. My concept of the character was that even if I chose the new Hitler thinking that he was in the New Hope, then I'd feel terrible. But I wouldn't secret myself on an island, then turn off the Force. Yeah. Again, what's the story here? Why? Right? That was one of the biggest problems with The Last Jedi. It was the lack of cohesive and efficient storytelling. The fact that it doesn't exist in that movie, and there's so many things that champion that particular thought process here. The narrative in the movie was bad. I understand that Luke Skywalker was secondary to Rey, secondary to Poe, secondary to Finn. I get all of that, but Canto Bight had more of a backstory than Luke Skywalker did. How is it a casino planet dealing with the subversive politics of people who deal in weapons and also the treatment of children and animals got more play in the middle part of a movie, in a scene that quite frankly no one cared about, period, full stop, end of story, get more time than the motivations and the history of Luke fucking Skywalker? Explain that one to me. Still kind of waiting on that to happen. I still keep thinking in the back of my mind, if I go and I watch the Last Jedi again is going to magically appear. I'm going to magically get it. Apparently I'm not woke enough to get it, I guess, but still, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever encountered. But he goes on here to say, remember, George had an overall arc in the original trilogy. If he didn't have all the details, he had sort of an overall feel for where the three were going. But this one's more like a relay race. You run and hand the torch off to the next guy, and he picks it up and he goes. Rian didn't write what happens in episode 9. He was going to hand it off to originally Colin Trevorrow and now JJ. Yeah, right? That perfectly encapsulates the problem with this movie, right? George had an idea. In the original trilogy, he had an idea. All right, like he did. We know about this. In the prequel trilogy, he had an idea. Maybe it wasn't espoused in the best possible way. Maybe it didn't have the best possible outcome, but he still had an idea. He still had a narrative in mind. He had a completed journey in mind for the end. He saw a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then he wrote around that. We know because Daisy Ridley told us that JJ Abrams did the exact same thing, and yet Rian Johnson decided to take it all and just go, and do his own thing. And as a result, that's left JJ Abrams and thankfully Chris Terrio to come back and scramble to write something that's going to basically kind of make up for the mistake that was The Last Jedi, right? And it's so weird that we're in this particular place, that we're in this place with this particular story. It boggles my damn mind that they fumbled the ball so badly here. That after everything we've seen in terms of cinematic universes and trilogies, from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy to even now, that the basic fundamental storytelling of a 3-act structure going through 3 films, giving us a beginning, a middle, and an end, that they failed so miserably with. I mean, come on, even the Hobbit trilogy, which came out 2012, 2013, 2014, had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even though the book was this big and they expanded it to being like this, but it still had a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was cohesive storytelling there. How did you screw this up so badly? How did you do it? It's from a top-down perspective. Kathleen Kennedy, who calls all the shots there, let it die. She let it get to this point. There's no other explanation for that in my mind. She let it get to this point. And as a result, now we have Mark Hamill coming out and saying like, yeah, I don't know. It exists. We have to live with that. But he finishes up here by saying that even though Hamill doesn't note that there's a sense of tragedy to where Luke's journey has ultimately taken him between Return of the Jedi and The Last Jedi, and he drew upon his personal life to relate to Luke in that regard, saying, it is tragic. I'm not a method actor, but one of the techniques a method actor will use is to try and use real-life experiences to relate to whatever fictional scenario he's involved in. The only thing I could think of, given the screenplay that I read, was that I was of the Beatles generation, and all you need is love, peace, and love. Okay. That's a little odd, but I kind of get it. It was of a different generation. Originally, when he was young, optimistic Luke Skywalker, he was peace and love, balanced to the Force, and then he grew up and just got bitter. Maybe space politics just ruined one too many family dinners. Well, one too many dinners with the weird nun creatures and, fighting over the green tit juice, which could also possibly be jism. We have no idea. Again, we were never really told what it was. But at the end of the day, we can see what he's trying to get to. We can see what he's attempting to put out there. The way that this trilogy was done was haphazard. A multi-billion-dollar purchase resulting in multi-billion-dollar films should have a better cohesive structure than, like Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings. Okay. Or anything like that. This was an epic failure across the board. JJ Abrams set it up to be expanded upon. What they did was they threw it out the window completely. Now JJ's back to right the ship, and who knows if he's going to be able to. Who knows what exactly the story will hold for us in regards to dealing with the end of the Skywalker saga, considering that there will be no Skywalkers around to finish it outside of, Kylo. And technically Leia's alive somewhere, but they're not recasting her. You know, they're not going to do all that. So the only person that could come back would have to be Mark Hamill. It would have to be him as a Force ghost going to probably Kylo and maybe completely messing with him, completely trying to turn him over to good, trying to whisper in his ear that he can be better, that he's not his grandfather, that, you know, he's got to atone for his actions, and further then bring balance back to the Force. If not, he will be destroyed by his own ambitions. I mean, that could be something that he could do. Sure, it's kind of a cop-out, but at least it's better than The Last Jedi. And as a die-in-the-cast Star Wars fan, a dude who's wearing a Star Wars shirt right now and wore one yesterday, it bothers me that this is where we find ourselves. And when you have the star, probably one of the most popular and influential characters in pop culture over the course of the past 41 years, coming out and saying, it's time to reevaluate where you stand. So maybe Grace Randolph in her coverage of Kathleen Kennedy was right. And it's probably where a lot of people want there to be changes. Because the people who currently run Star Wars don't understand Star Wars. It's not the other way around. Fans understand it. The corporate side of it doesn't. Because all they care about is ticket sales, which are fleeting, merchandise sales, which aren't there, and book sales, which surprisingly are doing pretty good. I will give it that. But everything else is up in the air, and it's in chaos. And it's a chaos of their own making. So the only way to balance out the Force, to balance out those movies, is to make sure that you actually have a complete story written, or at least outlined, from beginning to end, which is one of the reasons why I think the Game of Thrones guys are going to be great. That's what I'm looking forward to. But I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments below. My name, of course, is Matt Jarbo. This has been 3 Buck Theater. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, and check back often for more content from me. In fact, if you want to see more content from me, you can do so right now.